Hello everyone, Phil Gallagher here of ThrabenU fame for another sweet Legacy stream. Tonight we are playing with Search Stompy. This is a deck list that I've been brewing off and on with my subs for about the last 2 weeks. Wow, actually it might even be about 3 now. So the idea originally started out looking something like this, where I wanted to play Lavabrink Venturer, Suppression Field, and Ancient Tomb together in the same shell. And the original version of this deck list played a metric crap ton of 3-drops. And I experimented with some other 3-drops, like Wingmare, for example, and messed around with the number of Sanctum Prelates. And we tried an Eldrazi focus build as well. And then we got the memo that Lurrus was stupid. So, tonight we're going to play with Lurrus and see how this deck functions if we just play what is essentially 2-drop tribal, as Goblin Lackey has dubbed it. So, if you look at what we're doing, I call this deck Search Stompy because we're trying to stop our opponents from fetching and tutoring. So we have Leonin Arbiters and Suppression Fields to stop that shenanigans. And Suppression Field also does a lot of other cool things right now. Let's see. Maybe there's a certain companion who really likes activated abilities, and it would be a real shame if all of them cost 2 more, or 4 more, or 6 more, or 8 more. Um, this strategy tends to hate on Zerda pretty well. We have Chalice of the Void, which oddly enough in this metagame often goes on 0 as often as it does on 1. And then we have a number of other hate bears. We have Thalia Heretic Cathar as just our generic catch-all hate bear. We have Drannith Magistrate as a way to stop our opponents from playing their companions, which is cool. And then we have to have a few things to actually close out the game. And previously the 3-drop creatures were what was closing out the game, but that's a no-go now. So Serra Avenger is our best beater at CMC 2. We can't cast it early, but that's okay. We want to be playing our hate pieces before our beaters anyway, so that's fine. And I'm trying out the tech of Anafenza Kintree Spirit to just slowly grow my creatures over time. And on that note, since many of our creatures are kind of, small and killable by everything, Honor of the Pure is supposed to help out with that. So in addition to just helping you close out the game, it also protects your creatures from Lightning Bolt in some cases. So Drannith Magistrate, for example, in the Blue-White-Red Delver matchup, once you put 1 Honor of the Pure in play, then this thing lives through Bolt, and your opponent is not going to get to use their Dreadhorde Arcanist or their Lurrus ever again, and things are sweet. Why Honor over Force? Great question. Great question. It is the deck building constriction of Lurrus. As far as the sideboard goes, we have 6 CMC 1 removal spells for matchups like Delver and Eldrazi. We have Null Rod because it's like one of the best cards in the format right now. We have Relic Warder because, like, damn, we cannot beat Ensnaring Bridge. We just pulled to that game 1. And then we have 3 pieces of Graveyard Hate. Digression. Graveyard Hate in this deck is super awkward because you're a Lurrus deck, so you don't really want to just like mutually nuke the graveyards, but you still need to have Graveyard Hate. And because of Suppression Field, you can't just play Tormod's Crypt as a free roll like you get to do in a lot of the other Lurrus decks. So instead I'm playing some hate cards that are going to do damage to me, but the hope is this hurts you more than it hurts me. With that being said, let's just go ahead and jump into it tonight. Oh, yeah, it's super awkward, Goblin Lackey. I played one other league with this list, and in multiple rounds I encountered that problem. That's right. We have Null Rod in our Chrome Mox Lotus Petal deck. It's fine. This is like, haha, you may have taken my arm, but I have your heart. That's kind of what we're going for. Like, there's like real self-sacrifice in this deck list on multiple angles. Like, the Null Rod hurts our artifact mana, but if we artifact mana out Null Rod, we probably win. And like similarly, if we stick Graveyard Hate against a lot of these decks, like we're just going to get there anyway. Alright, I haven't looked at my hand yet, but I see a land and a chrome box and a couple of petals, so I'm assuming we're going to keep, and I'll do the math as soon as this refreshes. What are we playing against? So we're playing against Lurrus. I have a turn 1 Thalia and Suppression Field. Yeah, we're snapping that off. This hand is so sexy. Oh man, and I won the die roll? This is hot. I guess we'll Suppression Field before playing the Chrome Mox. Like, there's worlds where this gets countered and I don't want to. Pitch the Anafenza for some reason. JK. Alright, we have played our entire hand on turn 1 as a mono-white deck. GG, opponent. I'm sorry, Goblin Lackey. Do you mean the Caracas that would require them to have 2 other lands to do it? Well, that's awkward. This was definitely the wrong sort of deck to be paired against with this opening hand. It's probably not a mirror. It's probably a pseudo-mirror. Like, my opponent is more likely to be on the humans deck than anything else. Or not the humans deck, the MM17, like, white weenie deck. We'll cast that next turn, and it'll be good. I think I'm just going to hold back and not attack here. If my opponent doesn't play a land, I get, like, a free block, and I save myself some damage. Costs 2 more. Yep, so my opponent's playing the MM17 white weenie deck. In which case, these Avengers are going to be real hot. Real hot. 3/3 is bigger than pretty much everything that my opponent has. And I'm going to have Vigilance. That's pretty good. That's fine. So my opponent has, like, no flyers. So we're going to 3-turn clock our opponent in the air, assuming that Luris doesn't happen. Luris's lifelink is awkward for me. Okay, there's a flyer. But my opponent has played a bunch of creatures instead of leaving this available as a blocker, so that's great. JK, what blocker? Sarah Avenger, the real MVP. Oh wow, opponent is just passing here. So they can pay 4 mana to activate the Smuggler's Copter. So the real question is, do I actually let them trade for the Smuggler's Copter and then play their Luris? I don't think so. I think I just say you have to hold 4 mana up, or any turn where you don't hold 4 mana up, you take 6. No, we care about the Smuggler Copter dying because my opponent can bring it back with Luris eventually. We care about that. So I'm just taking Time Walk here. My opponent didn't get to advance their board. I got to advance my board. I banked a little bit of mana for later. I'm totally good with this situation. Okay, that's fine. So it's still the same position as before where my... Oh god, that's gonna be so good. Alright, so we need 2 more mana to overload that. But that is gonna be devastating. I'm going to enjoy this game. That's a touch annoying. But it's okay. Turbojet Megachrist, thank you very much for your continued support, friend. Let me get that counter updated. Opponent's thinking about suicide attacks for Kithian reasons. Oh, Daddy wants a land. Oh god, Daddy wants a land. Let's do it. That's close enough. This is the sexiest thing I've ever done on camera. So when people ask me, Phil, how did you get so good at Magic? I respond by putting Winds of Abandon in my deck. It's easy. Oh man. This stream goes to Reddit for sure. One, two, three, four, five, six. So I could trade Smuggler's Copter for Arbiter. I don't think that really benefits me. I think I'm just going to wait till I have 2 lethal attackers and then kill my opponent. I don't want to leave myself with, like, my opponent having a creature on board when I get nothing. Yeah, we'll play it. Opponent can, like, wasteland us off it if they want to, like, tie up their mana. So I don't quite have enough mana to bounce that yet. Yep. Do not care. Was not planning on bouncing things this game. So now things get a little more interesting. In that if I want to trade Sarah's Avenger for Smuggler's Copter, this is one of my easiest opportunities to do it. But my opponent would need 12 mana available in order to Copter plus Giver Protect. They have 4, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so I think I'm still good with just letting the turn counter tick up here. Like, I have 3 more Winds of Abandon to draw towards to just, like, completely savage my opponent again. Yeah, so, like, opponent is recovering, but opponent needs, like, more Smuggler's Copters. The other thing that's just terrifying is that I can draw an Honor of the Pure, and then I have the bigger creature. This is annoying. So we'll float some mana. So now that Ghost Quarter is on. It's a slow game. 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they still do have enough to pay for it. That's annoying. But again, I don't think I really care. Like, we'll just wait till we draw towards Honor the Pure or Wins. Yeah, so we can't pay 4 in order to do that, so, like, that's fine. Yes, we're both on Luris decks. However, both Luri have been exiled. Lurises, depending on how you want to pluralize that sucker. Real talk, I kind of think my opponent should start sandbagging some creatures so they don't get blown out by another Winds. Like, I know it's, like, way far away at this point, but, like, they saw it once. It's something that should be on their radar. Oh, hold up. Did my opponent tap too low? 4, 5, 6, 7? No, they have a Lotus Petal and Mox Amber. Never mind. I guess they're probably never tapping too low. They don't really have sources of card advantage. Hope you all are enjoying your night. This game is hilarious and brings me great joy. Nobody searches. Nobody searches. This is crazy. I also really don't know if it's correct for my opponent to continue to Ghost Quarter me versus build towards having a metric crap ton of mana or multiple suppression field activations in a turn. Holding cards also makes the Smuggler's Copter block better later on. Yeah, so like the way my opponent kills me is getting more bodies than I do by a considerable margin and hitting me for 22 in a single turn. The game's going to end when I draw another Winds of Abandon and get to cast it. To that end, do I even play this Thalia out? Yeah, I will. My opponent will bounce my Thalia at some point because they get bored. I will also deck my opponent before they deck me. Okay, this is also GG. This card is so hard for them to beat. So I've just shut off their removal and approximately 20 of their creatures. Oh, great. That's very good as well. So now I can just present lethal in an attack. So because my opponent does not have Source of Plowshares available, they actually are not going to have any instant speed outs to double Sarah Avenger, and so we're going to see the concession here. Okay, so now we get some really interesting deck building decisions, and the primary decision is whether or not we are keeping Chalice of the Void in our deck. So Chalice on 1 is really absurd in this matchup, but we get the choice of playing either Chalice of the Void or 6 1-drop removal spells. Opponent is going to have maybe Seal of Cleansing, Relic Order, and Paths for me. Maybe a Council's Judgment as well. So opponent probably boards out some of their legendary creatures in respect of my own Caracas, and some of their smaller creatures that are going to get walled by Avengers. Not 100% sure on overload rulings, but I think it's still CMC 2 when it's on the stack. I'm not going to lie, I kind of just think our deck's good against their deck. And I don't even know that we should sideboard a single card. Like, I can board in Relic Order to stop some of their mana acceleration, but that seems kind of whatever. Like, as long as I can answer their Lurrus, I just see myself winning these games. And I think Chalice on 1 basically counts as answering Lurrus as well, because Lurrus recurring the 1-drops is what I really care about. Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to sideboard. Like, it's possible I should sideboard some removal when I'm on the draw. But if my opponent goes turn 1 Dork, and I just go turn 1 Chalice, I feel good about that. We just had a ridiculous pseudo-mare, Lynn Chalice, that involved me casting a Winds of Abandon for X equals, or for the Overload, and getting like a 7 for 1 or something like that. My opponent has taken a mulligan. I have kind of a weak hand in that I don't have stable mana. So while this would be a really good hand against a combo deck, I'm not sure that it's actually great here. I'm going to ship this one and try to look for something that's a touch more stable. This would fit that definition. It'll let us Chalice on turn 1. So I think with this hand, I'm probably going turn 1 Chalice off Lotus Petal, turn 2 Leonin Arbiter, and just pitching my Chrome Mox. Chrome Mox is good as the game goes long, but since I'm already down a card, I think I'm fine with that going. I think I'm just going to like value my cards. My cards will help me stay alive in the short term. Maybe Melee. I don't know if you're familiar with Hello Newton's Elves list, but that's a deck that like pivots back and forth between being a companion and not a companion deck, and it's super cool. Echo's Quarter is slightly awkward for me. I think I'm going to feed it the Caracas rather than my Plains. It's awkward if they have a Wasteland, but it'll let me keep the more stable land for later. There's the punish. I think this is obligatory. I'm going to take the trade. It either forces my opponent to trade the lands 1-for-1, or it might keep them from deploying another creature. The reason to hold the land is so that if I draw a Lotus Petal or Chrome Mox, I'm a little bit better off. But I think I'm good with this. That is devastating. I think I'm going to miss the land drop here. There goes half my artifact mana. Well, if I played out the land, my opponent would just like 100% Ghost Quarter me, right? So like this plays towards the upside of hitting one of the 7 artifact mana cards. Now I only have 3 Lotus Petals to hit. I think I'm just dead. I'm going to get 3 turned by these before I get to play this removal. Unless I draw a Lotus Petal. So let's go no land drop here. But this is definitely a bad spot. Okay. If that names the other piece of artifact acceleration, I can just concede. And it did. Well played, opponent. So now I've shown my opponent that I'm playing Chalice. So something I can think about doing is actually not playing Chalice and actually playing the removal spells for the next game. The other thing I can do is like board out my own arbiters because they help my opponent's game plan. And instead play some number of other things. So like if I go -4 of these, I can play the Relic Orders, which are harder to cast, but they can maybe theoretically eat a piece of artifact mana that's sitting on the board, or a Smuggler's Copter. That's something I didn't consider before. And then I can just play 2 pieces of Singleton removal, where it's awkward with Chalice of the Void, but it's not the end of the deal. Because if I have Chalice of the Void, I'm shutting off so many cards. So the question becomes, do I play Swords or Path? My opponent's Arbiter is somewhat likely to shut off the downside of Path. And as games go really long, I don't super care about how many lands they have. I can also Path my creatures in a pinch. It's close. Swords of Plowshares is probably only giving them 2 life on average, though. And, like, actually 2 life might be generous. So I think I'm just going to play Swords and not super worry about the amount of life that I'm giving them. I would like to play first. I'll be keeping this hand. I'm going to have to think about how I want to play it. But I get a Chalice on turn 1. And I will be taking that. I think this is just land Lotus Petal, Chalice, and defer the decision on Chrome Mox until later. If I'm willing to go turbo, next turn I can Chrome Mox, Suppression Field, or Avenger, play out my Lurrus, and rebuy a Lotus Petal from the graveyard. Which, given this hand, I think is okay. Suppression Field is like definitely going to be good against some of my opponent's better cards. So like Suppression Field is very good against Smuggler's Copter. Aether Vial's dead and you know it. We killed it. If I play the Mox, I get to Lurrus this turn. I get to play Lurrus and Lotus Petal. And then my turn 4 will look real hot with double Serra Avenger. So it's just a question of, like, do I want this Suppression Field? I think I want the Lurrus. No, my opponent has a 1 of Council's Judgment. They can actually remove the Lurrus. So it's not 100% safe. It's probably safe this turn, though, because I don't think they can get to white colorless this turn. Nice. So we can't play this on our first, second, or third turn, just for anyone who's not super familiar with Serra Avenger. So we can't cast it this turn. We'll have to cast 2 of them next turn. So now our opponent doesn't get to cast their Lurrus, which is cool. And we'll chill. Lurrus doesn't have first strike or anything, so we're not getting through the Thalia yet. Tired Papa Smurf, thank you very much for following. I hope you're enjoying this ridiculous game of Magic the Gathering. Ah. Now we only get to cast 1 Serra Avenger on my turn. You kidding me? That's so lame. That's weird. I feel like that was supposed to name Chrome Mox because Lotus Petal is a 1-turn temporary mana source and Chrome Mox is a more permanent mana source. But that's okay. Lotus Petal represents 2 mana in a single turn with Lurrus. Okay, I can buy that. Oh, in that case, I could have played my other Serra Avenger if they had revoked Chrome Mox instead. Alright, good play, opponent. Wins? Wins, you say? Okay. So I could pay 3 mana, wins the Revoker. But I think I just attack with Avenger. So I can attack with Avenger, trade with Smuggler's Copter, cast Winds on Revoker for 3 mana. No, I can't both reuse the Lotus Petal and cast the Avenger from the graveyard. But regardless, we're good with attacking with the Sarah Avenger and making the trade for the copter. Like, the trade very much favors me. They're going to get to loot away a 1-drop out of it. Oh. Alright, I am surprised. So do I wins and unlock my Lotus Petal? Nah, we can save wins as an endgame bomb and just, like, deploy another one of these and be good with it, since we didn't have to trade away a body this turn. Is that the little, like, 1-drop that gets bigger when you have artifacts or something? I don't know what that card is. Alright, you would like to Council's Judgment away my Luris. That's fine. So, as far as my opponent's deck goes, they definitely want 1-drops that are legendary for Mox Amber reasons. Yeah, we got like a 7 for 1 last game. I wonder if they're going to have another Smuggler's Copter since they were so willing to block. Are we ready to take this? Do I just take a 3 for 1? Is a 3 for 1 good enough? Oh, no, I guess I can't because of the Thalia attacks. I'm just going to play that into the Wasteland. I don't think my opponent's going to Wasteland me. Do I Chalice on 2? There's a Lotus Petal Phyrexian Revoker situation going on over there. I don't think I'm supposed to Chalice on 2. I am thinking about playing another Chalice on 1, though. So I can't assume that my opponent is playing this exact 75. If my opponent is playing this exact 75 and I cast Chalice on 2, I probably just win, even though I shut off like the entirety of my deck. I think I'm just going to cast another one of these on 1. I think that's good enough. This way, like, I don't shut off all of my deck, and I also play around the Seal of Cleansings. Yeah, but if my opponent has, like, another, like, a second Council Judgment or something, I lose because I Chalice on 2 myself. And that's, like, super, super awkward. You have found a Copter, and you have 2 mana up. Alright, so now I'm just going to have to overload. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to need 7, so I need 2 more mana in order to overload. That's fine. God, I love Winds of Abandon. Like, definite new pet card. Yeah, I don't even play that. Like, that's going to go under a Chrome Mox. I guess I can go under a Chrome Mox right now. So I have 3, 4, 5. That'll be 6 mana. Then any land. Rip means I have 7 for overload. I even have enough mana to pay for Arbiter shenanigans if that happens. If you had told me that this match was going to go this many turns total, I don't think I would have believed you. So now I can either play super patiently or I can just use 1 Winds to get the first Revoker out of the way. And then use the second Winds to kill them. I just need 2 more mana. Am I good with trying to just end this game next turn? I think I'm good with this. I also get the upside of getting to kill my opponent if they pay to search. Yeah, this is the greatest match of Magic ever, Arkin. It's so much fun. So just quick note for anyone who's curious, if they crew the Smuggler's Copter, I still have lethal. They block the Sarah Avenger and 2 Dranith Magistrates get in there and kill them. What a game of Magic. Yeah, so for anyone curious about like the 2 decks that I've been playing recently, there were both of them. Yeah, I have a whole screenshot folder that is specifically for this deck, and most of them are just ridiculous Winds of Abandon screenshots, where I'm just getting an X for 1. Oh yeah, you're right. If they crew it, the copter is just going to get pathed as well. Yeah, but hypothetically, if they had some containment priest or something, like we still have them there. Not that one. This not no. Where's V5? V5. Yeah, all right. So wins looking like an MVP that round. Honor of the Pure didn't come into play, but it would have been very good if I had drawn it. I'm not 100% sure on this deck list or anything yet, but like I do think what I'm doing here has real potential. Like shoving the hate bears down your opponent's throat on both turn 1 and 2 has just been so strong for me in games. How many CN? I'm not sure what CN is. Is that a typo? Oh, how many concedes to turn 1 suppression field do you have? A lot. Like, I don't screenshot those because I don't find them particularly interesting. Like, when you're on the play and you just play turn 1 suppression field and your opponent kept a fetch-based hand, what are they supposed to do? I recognize my opponent's username. I'm going to see if I know what kind of Luris deck they're going to be playing. They've been playing Esper Vial in the past. So they're probably not playing that now. They could just be playing an Esper Hate Bears deck. I'm going to keep this hand, I think. Because if I rip a land, I can have turn 2 double Hate Bear off my Ancient Tomb. I don't know what I'm playing against. I'm going to pitch the Winds here, even though it's very strong. I'm going to lead on Arbiter and just try to like spike a freebie this game, with the hope that I can play turn 2 Thalia and Dranith Magistrate if I draw planes. He's so good. How does he do it? So now we just have turn 3 Aggro Luris, turn 4 Sarah Avenger, and we're just turning stuff sideways this game, hoping it works. Sure. Yes. All right. So again, for those of you not here for round one, you can't cast this on your first, second, or third turns. I'm just going to go ahead and redeploy the Thalia. If Thalia acts as a Schadenport when I already have 3 power in play, I'm totally good with that. So Arcan, I can't play Ghost Quarter well because I'm a Suppression Field deck, but they would be looking pretty hot. Okay, that's a pretty good turn cycle for the opponent. That redundant Thalia is not very good for me. Luris Miracles, huh? I think I'm going to abandon the Thalia plan in the short term. Like, until I have answered that Caracas via, like, Suppression Field, my Thalia is not going to stick around. It's just for Schadenport. That is correct. Every deck is a Luris deck. You have Luris Goblins, Luris White Weenie, Luris Search Stompy, Luris Miracles, Luris Ant, Luris TES. I'm not done. I can keep going. Luris Delver of at least 3 different flavors. Luris Control. Luris Midrange. Wow, yes, Luris Humans, Luris Goblins. So we can float a mana, cast a Schadenport. A Blind Terminus at some point in this game would be a kick in the teeth. So, in case you're not super familiar with Luris, it's your permanents that have to have CMC 2 or less. So it's theoretically possible that my opponent could play something like Terminus. You're going to have a bad time. Yeah. Yep. Yup! Okay, interesting decision point this turn is whether I should play a Chalice on 1 or a Chalice on 0. So my opponent's Luris is kind of annoying for me. If my Drannith Magistrate dies somehow. Alright, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. So let's Schadenport and play Chalice on 1. Let's stop Swords to Plowshares on Drannith Magistrate. Because if the Drannith Magistrate doesn't die, I don't super care about their Luris. Like, it's still definitely annoying. Hey, Narelle, thank you very much for your support. Very much appreciated. Hope all is going well for you during these quarantine times. Let's get the sub goal counter ticked up a little bit. So my opponent's at 4, but they might actually be at 7 due to Luris effectively getting them some life. So I'm hitting them for lethal next turn. I can play my own Thalia and a Luris. My opponent could play their own Luris, trade with my Luris, take 6 damage, be at 1. There's nothing in my graveyard for me to play. Ah! My opponent has revealed a blind Terminus. That is devastating. I don't think I'm going to play another creature out. Zotmaster, thank you very much as well for the support. So now my opponent is going to get to play Loris and start cycling baubles until they get something that matters. We're in a bad position. I don't care if I cast this and it goes to the graveyard because I can rebuy it with my own Loris later. That I care about. But we know the top of the library is safe. Opponent can cast Loris. They can rebuy a Snapcaster Mage as a blocker or get a Bauble to cycle while holding up Caracas to bounce one of my creatures. It's going to be a very awkward game. Okay, so that's interesting. So I probably want to tap my Ancient Tomb to play that so that I have all my white mana available to cast a bounce creature. Predict. So I can recast that with my own Luris later. So now the next question is, how do I do this attack, considering that they have Caracas? I want them to bounce my Luris. So that I can just recast it. If I just attack with Thalia, they just bounce the Thalia. So I have to attack with both. They could also trade Lurrus. Which would be interesting. Alright, so I can't recast this Thalio this turn. I know Predict is the top card of the library. But I think I'm good with making that trade. It gives my opponent more life to work with. So I'm playing this just solely to see if there's a 2 on top. It is just a Brainstorm. Alright, that's fine. So now I play Arbiter. I can still technically lose to Snapcaster Mages. But yes, basically, it's Entreat the Angels or Bust. It's a little more complicated like that in reality, since I am at 11. Ooh, opponent forgot to bounce my Thalia, or chose not to bounce my Thalia. So we're playing this in the wrong order because they know about the Thalia already. So now they can fetch and get another fresh look. But, like, fetching is literally a turn off the clock, and fetching represents lethal if both of these resolve and are unchecked. Alright, there's a Snapcaster Mage. So, because our opponent is playing a Lurrus deck, we know that they're not actually playing something like Jace the Mind Sculptor or Teferi that is just going to, like, bury me in Planeswalker-based card advantage. Ooh, opponent. Okay, opponent has Council's Judgment in the yard for my Chalice on 1. That's very good. Very, very good. I need to do something good this turn. It's not the worst, I guess. It makes the Caracas bounce shenanigans noticeably worse. Yeah, and so we see our opponent being willing to, like, use 2 cards to get rid of that suppression field. So we took a good amount of damage off our own Ancient Tomb this game, and it's going to come back and be costly. My opponent has shuffled here, so they're going to get to know whatever card it is that I draw. Yeah, let's run it back. We do it in this order for not tapping the Ancient Tomb reasons. A Terminus. Yep. Do I play Thalia into Terminus? I think so, because it would take their Snapcaster Mage off the battlefield. And this Thalia isn't doing a lot of work anyway. I don't think they would cast the Terminus. No, the list that I'm playing in Double Dash tonight is an outdated list. Unfortunately, the Double Dash event was put together prior to Ikoria being printed, so none of those cards are in the event. I should potentially not cast this Thalia here to like try and hold it to like bait my next thing, but since I'm at such a low life total, I kind of think I'm on the like jam my spells and whatever happens happens sort of train. Yeah, I'm very much hoping that we get to like resubmit deck lists before the next portion of Double Dash. The event kind of feels bad now. Like, it was a super cool idea, and then we got like the biggest haymaker ever thrown at us in terms of this companion mechanic. So like all of the deck lists that we're playing are like basically 3-week-old deck lists that no one would play anymore. So, it's kind of a feel bad. Like the players and commentators and stuff are still like all absolutely insane, so you still get to see some super high end Magic. Let's see, so I know they have Force of Will still. I know they have Force of Will. Yes, and that was the whole plan when we put this together. Was that, well, it wasn't like explicitly stated or anything, but like no one expected this degree of change in Legacy overnight. So at this point, I'm trying to save the Chalice of the Void until I can do it and something else in the same turn cycle. Snapcaster Mage is something that will really punish me for this. But like, I suspect that my opponent has a Terminus in the hole. I know they have a Force of Will in the hole, and they get like some ability to just. Are we just like straight up making an Angel? Yep. That's going to be good enough, unfortunately, unless I get a Wins as my draw. Well played by my opponent there. Okay, minus that one, like, Drannith Magistrate turn, where they threw away a card. But other than that, like, tail end of that game was very tightly played. Okay. What do we want for our opponent? Well, due to the Double Dash thing tonight, it's not going to be that long. I may not finish 5 rounds, but the stream itself won't be too terribly long. I'm trying to wrap up around 8:30. My opponent's Caracas was super good this game, but a lot of times we'll get Suppression Field into play, or we'll have some non-legendary creatures, and that won't be the end of the world. I probably want to hate on their Luris / their Snapcasters a little bit. So, like, Dranith Magistrate is a human wizard, Leonin Arbiter is a cat cleric, Thalia is a human soldier, Anafenza is a spirit soldier, Sarah Avenger is an angel. There's enough creature type diversification that's not really good. I think I'm willing to go a little bit slower in this matchup. So I think I'm going to cut my Chrome Box and play 2 more things that are going to tax the graveyard. And 1 of Relic Order for anything they have that's shenanigans. At worst, it can hit like a counterbalance. No, unfortunately, it is not a human. This hand blows. This hand's great. We'll keep this one. My opponent has mulligan. I'm going to throw away my redundant Thalia. And so, in case anyone's wondering, like, this is why I'm so pro, like, Lotus Petal and Chrome Box and similar things over Aether Vial right now. The ability to just, like, jam these haymakers down your opponent's throat on turn 1 and follow up with a different strong play on turn 2 is so great right now. So, like, my opponent forced this, so, like, we traded evenly. It was Lotus Petal and Chalice for Force and whatever their pitch for Force was. But now I just followed up with Thalia. Thalia starts chipping away, and then I have Dranith Magistrate, so they don't get to Snapcaster removal back or, like, get their Luris going. No shuffle off the Ponder, by the way, for anyone who was wondering. That is a 1-of, right? Just magnetic 1-of. I'll get a Suppression Field or something eventually, but it's definitely a little tilting. Yeah, I don't actually know whether or not, like, it is a 1-of. It makes sense, like, just kind of due to the nature of miracles that it's a 1-of, but it might not be. So the top of their library is blind right now, so we're going to try to use this as the time to cast the Suppression Field. A Flooded Strand. Nice. The Suppression Field being in play is definitely comforting. It means we're not just going to get, like, buried by Luris hitting play immediately if, like, my Dranith Magistrate dies somehow. Okay, well, the good news is that that costs 2 to activate. So what am I doing with my life? I'm attacking for 1. That much is clear. And then it's a little trickier. I'd like to cast my Loris when I have 5 mana so that I can Loris and Chalice of the Void in the same turn cycle. That's going to be pretty good. I think I'm going to double up on Drannith Magistrate. A Mystic Sanctuary. Okay. So like Drannith Magistrate is going to make me worse to something like Supreme Verdict or Terminus happening. But, like, again, keeping Snapcaster Mage and my opponent's Loris shut off I think is pretty important. I'm really glad we're not playing against, like, top Miracles where I would have to worry about, like, my opponent finding a 2 and then having a 2 every turn forever. Very glad that's not a thing. Alright, goodbye, Suppression Field. I'll miss you. Ooh. I mean, I really enjoyed gameplay when Top was in the format, personally. I don't want to unban it or anything, but I definitely look upon that time period with largely fond memories because the D&T versus Miracles matchup was so interesting. This can be real bad. So, like, if they counter this and then put a Terminus below it, I probably die. Terminus. Not Terminus. Not Terminus definitely makes me happy. %, not willing to play out another creature until this board is empty. Yeah, the Death and Taxes mirror when both players have functional hands is really cool. But there's a lot of games that are just non-Magic games because, like, one person has Bile and the other doesn't, or one person has Jitte and the other doesn't. But the games where both people are, like, operating on full-ish resources are super cool. There's a lot of sub-games around equipment and, like, the Monarch mechanic and things of that nature that are really neat. I don't wish I had an Ether Vial. I'm doing just fine. I have all the damage I need. Tweedledee and Tweedledum over here are doing work. Every turn it's not Terminus. My insides do a fist bump. Every turn it's not Entreat. Same thing. I'm sure it has to do with something in Standard, like some removal spell in Standard. Yes. Alright, let's test the waters with Lotus Petal, shall we? You have revealed Determinus. That's awkward for me. So now you can Terminus away the Dranith Magistrate. And we have a Luris fight. I guess I have double removal spell for Luris, so if you don't have a 2 on top as well, I'm okay with that. Caracas is super awkward, though. I guess on both sides of the battlefield. So you get to know what I draw. I'll bounce your Luris. At some point, if they tap their Caracas, I'll actually try to Winds it away. Alright. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 available mana. So Arbiters are bait here. A Force of Will on top. That is mighty awkward for me, because I don't want to cast Luris into the Force of Will that is on top of your library. But I also haven't cast something that's good enough to clear a Force of Will yet. But if you don't have a Force of Will right now, you don't answer Luris before I get to cast this Chalice of the Void. However, I can wait and play Luris with Caracas Protection, but that still doesn't answer the whole problem. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast this with the Caracas up. I don't know whether or not they have an answer to Luris at the ready. Okay. Yeah, Lord Darkview. So, assuming that the Luris resolved, I absolutely would have just cast the Chalice of the Void. A Crater Maker. Okay. Luris Crater Maker is super rough for me. How does this read? Destroy target colorless non-land permanent. Can Goblin Maker can Crater Maker sacrifice to itself? / would my opponent see that play? Because I can sacrifice my Lotus Petal to cast a Winds on it. It can sacrifice to itself. Will my opponent see that? Because if my opponent doesn't see that and I exile that, that's super good for me. So, do I take that line? I think I take that line. So it's the same as just like wastelanding yourself. But I don't want that in the yard. Alright, they have seen the line. Alright, so now I know that they have Terminus. There are going to be some ridiculously long games. I use the Lotus Petal so I don't give them a target for their Goblin Crater Maker. That way, if they miss the line of just like using it to bounce itself, I get ahead. Alright, I think I've lost this one at this point. Like, I get to bounce my opponent's Lurrus every turn, but they get a Bauble every turn, or like a Seal. But I don't know that I'm quite ready to concede either. So at this point, I need like a Resolve to Honor of the Pure to get my creatures out of correct range. Alright, so I just take this hit. I could play Walking Ballista, but like redeploying Walking Ballista for 1 from the graveyard isn't all that hot. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and concede. I'm going to value my time here. Like, there's worlds where I get through this game, but I think in all likelihood, my opponent wins this one. Like, I know they have a counterspell in hand, so, like, that doesn't resolve. I don't have a good follow-up play. My opponent is grinding value from the graveyard and can put things in to proactively answer my best outs. It's a little rough. This is an awkward hand. My opponent's not on a companion deck. No results for this player. I don't know that I'm going to keep my hand. So the most likely decks that my opponent could be playing are things like Dredge, that just like can't have a companion, or Eldrazi, that is still somewhat competitive, even though my opponent, or sorry, even though like companions are a thing. So my hand's pretty bad against Eldrazi, pretty great against Dredge, pretty good against most combo decks. Improved by a lot of draw steps. I think I'm going to keep this one. Yorion Dredge, huh? I guess that's a thing. Impossible Bowler, if you click on the set of cards that's on screen, that's the Cardboard Live extension, you can see the exact deck list. It's a weirdo. We call this one Search Stompy. Okay. So it was probably Eldrazi, and our hand is not good against Eldrazi. But we already knew that coming in. Oh, great. No turn 1 play. That means we maybe have a chance. So in all likelihood, I get Thought Not Seared and lose my wins. And if I cast a Thalia, it's actually pretty hard for me to cast the rest of my hand. The suppression field isn't necessarily great, but the Honor of the Pure is. Like, Honor of the Pure plus, like, stupid white creatures means that I can stall out their board. So this is not a traditional play from the playbook, but we're going turn 1 Honor of the Pure over turn 1 Hate Bear here. The Honor of the Pure will also help us play towards the end game 4-power Lurrus that gets to trade with Thought Not Seer. So this was their draw for turn since they didn't play it last turn. Alright, let's draw a land so I get this, like, first striking 3 power Thalia. Hey, what did I tell you? I said draw a land. We're not casting that for 0. That'll shut off our artifact mana, which I definitely care about. We're also bluffing having Swords to Plowshares a bit available, so like there are worlds where my opponent doesn't just like ram a Thought Not Seer down our throat to try and play around a Swords. Meh. Am I dead? I think I'm dead enough that I'm just going to concede. We knew going into the hand that it would be bad versus Eldrazi, so like, I accept that. That happened. So these Chalice of the Voids super suck. Drannith Magistrate is not great. Suppression Field is not great. I'm probably going to Relic Order for Jitte. So I can go 3 Suppression Fields out. The Suppression Fields are not dead. They're just bad. So my opponent has lands with activated abilities, like Wasteland, Mishra's Factory. They have Jitte, they might have things like Endbringer. This seems fine. This is 61. Nice, I do get to board out the 4th Suppression Field. In-out numbers are perfect. I will say that I'm sad that this version doesn't get to play the Baneslayer Angel. The Baneslayer Angel was like absolutely boss in my testing. It's a 6-card hand that has 1 removal spell and 1 crappy creature. What do I want my opening hands to do? Maybe I just don't have great opening hands. I win by accruing advantage via Anafenza or Winds of Abandon. So this is 4 lands, so that I can cast Lurrus. Lurrus plus Land and Arbiter means that I have, like, infinite chump blocks. Maybe that's fine. I'm, like, super not excited about this hand. So it's just the question of, like, do I accept this 6-card hand that has one too many lands, or do I accept a 5-card land where I have a higher chance of not having 3 lands? I'm not going to path that, I don't think. So I'm sad if they soul land and take my path due to the lines that I took. Snap trade, creatures going to the graveyard is good for me. Doesn't appear that they have any fetches in hand. Not that I can see. Yeah, I don't see any. I'm fine with just playing this out naked, because next turn I get Arbiter plus Honor of the Pure, assuming my Lurrus doesn't get dismembered or spatial contortion. But, like, they have no manipulation and very few removal spells, so I definitely think this is, like, a make 'em have it moment. No, my Honor of the Pure. Yeah. So I get infinite cat chump blocks. That's worth something. I think we just take 4 and accept the chump block here. I'm not ready to trade away my Lurrus. Alright, we're dead. We're going to have kicked wins as the out. We have the 6 mana to do it. We just have to draw it in 2 draw steps. So I will cast this and 100% chump block with it. I guess we're not technically dead to that. Just 1 point away from being dead. So we go to 4 here. This puts us to 3. This puts us to 1. Assuming that we draw wins and... Or it's not kicked, it's overload, sorry. And we didn't draw it. So we kept the game 1 hand that was bad against Eldrazi. Had kind of a rough mulligan there. In a series of unfortunate events. Let's play one more. And then I'm going to send you all over to the Double Dash, which should be starting up momentarily. I hope you all have enjoyed this. A lot of people have been asking me to stream with this. Did you pre-record Goblin Lackey? I assume so, since you're not getting set up now. Yeah, spoilers for people who aren't familiar. Sometimes we have to pre-record matches because, you know, time zones are very much a thing, and people have real lives. Same was true of the Legacy Premier League as well. Like, when you have a cast as packed as, like, the things that you are in this event. Fat Pow, it's the Legacy Double Dash event, which is hosted by Shoals Cubed. I will be rating them right after this match, so I will send you directly there. I should know Dope Defy. I've played against them a bunch. So when I have played against them, I think they were on Sneak and Show a bunch. But we'll see if they reveal a companion. Lives in this pandemic? Okay, let's look at the deck list while my opponent times out here. Okay, so what problems have we had tonight? I feel like the mana ratio is about right. Like, we've definitely gotten stuck without mana sources a couple of times, and we've definitely flooded a few times, but it feels like we've had roughly the correct balance of things. Alright, so my opponent is maybe playing a Luris Delver deck. Based on MTG Goldfish results, then. Yeah. 3 wins is probably too many without a second land. I think I need a more stable hand. Like, the card's obviously going to be great if our opponent is playing Delver, but I don't have a super explosive opener. This I probably keep and throw back 1 Lotus Petal. Alright. Budget bubble. So, real talk, do I just play the Thalia out on 1 in 2 days? Yes. Yes, I do. See ya. I'll be hosting momentarily. So my opponent used a long time to mulligan, and is, like, taking a long time right now. I don't think this is actually a long time in response to Lotus Petal, like, thinking whether or not they're going to daze it or anything. I think they're doing something else while playing. I don't know that I'm correct or anything, but that's the impression that I have. Alright, Force of Will. So we're probably dead if our opponent's Delver blind flips. But if their Delver doesn't blind flip, I think I'm okay. Alright, great. So I get to try wins this turn and then Sarah Avenger next turn. Oh no, I don't actually. Due to my own Thalia attacks. That's awkward. I know my opponent has this Force of Will too, which further complicates everything. So I can... Yeah, I think I'm just dead. My own Thalia has betrayed me. We needed to use, like, one thing to clear the Force this turn, one thing to trade with the Delver next turn. So I potentially, like, should not have attacked with Thalia on the off chance that the Delver doesn't flip. To save myself a point of damage, because, like, those individual points of damage matter a lot. Okay. So my opponent dropped Force of Will Guard, so that's cool. Now I probably have to play towards the Delver's not flipping, and my opponent also not having a removal spell. Yeah. Alright. Delver's flipped. So I go to 1, and then I can't double answer Delver's. Alright. That's sort of unfortunate, but it is what it is. Also unfortunate is that we only saw Underground Sea from our opponent. So we don't have a ton of information about some of their exact deck building choices. Like, we don't know if they're a bug deck. We don't know if they're an Esper deck. We don't know if they're Grixis. Like, we don't know the specifics of what cards are going to play. So it's unclear whether some things like Rest in Peace are going to be good. So what I've been doing is I bring in 6 CMC1 removal spells versus these decks and board out my chalices. MTG the Epic Storm, thank you very much for your support, friend. Let's tick that sub goal up by 1. So when we start thinking next about like which one of our other cards are going to be weak, Suppression Field is fine on the play, but worse on the draw. I'm not your buddy, friend. I'm not your friend, pal. So I can choose to go away from the Suppression Field portion of the deck if I would like. The Suppression Field portion is good against Baubles. Magistrate's also good against Baubles. I wish I knew what other color they were. Like, if the only thing that's relevant with their graveyard is the Baubles and, like, Loris Recursion, then this is only medium, and this is probably not worth boarding in. When I'm unsure, I can trim some artifact mana. Suppression Fields are better on the play than on the draw. think I'm going to go with overloading my opponent with removal and keep most of this in. Alright, let's do some trimming. Let's trim a Thalia, let's trim a suppression field, and let's trim a petal, rather than cut any one thing. I don't know that I really want to lose access to anything. When I'm on the draw, I'll probably junk my suppression fields. Luigi91, thank you very much for following, as well as GDog64 and Jackie Brown 87. I hope you are enjoying the content. So food for thought, how do I make the endgame of this deck better? I'm happy with Sarah Avenger. And Offensa hasn't really done anything tonight. And as we've seen, the legendary subtype is not necessarily amazing. I'm going to keep this even though it's not explosive. It has stable mana, a removal spell, and hate cards that attack from a couple different angles. So the thing is that, like, we're an Arbiter deck, so I think you get to pick one of Arbiter or Squadron Hawk. I don't think you get to play both side by side. It's like trying to play Ghost Quarter in your suppression field deck, right? Like, it's just too awkward. Alright, super type. Yeah, super sub. Let's play the cat this turn. If it resolves, great. If it trades with a counterspell, great. Like, Sarah Avenger is kind of the gem in this hand. Like, we'd love to grow Sarah Avenger to a 4/4 so that it is better than Delver in combat. Hey, there we go. So now we get to make a choice. I can cut off the graveyard. I can try to temporarily stop my opponent from playing and using Lurrus. Or I can just play something that will make all of my future creature drops better. I think I want to do something that interacts with my opponent's Lurrus, or like tries to get a counterspell out of their hand. So if I play Drannith Magistrate and it gets countered or removed, there's just like a better chance that the winds will resolve later and actually get to answer the Lurrus. Okay, so that probably means that my opponent is Grixis and they found Lightning Bolt. Play Honor of the Pure. Drannith Magistrate gets Lightning Bolted in response. I think I'm supposed to just attack. I probably sneak in an extra point of damage by just attacking now. I don't want them to draw a card with Bobble. I'm going to try to rest in peace now. This is, like, maybe not good enough for a counterspell. And it's also a little damning because it's also going to shut off my Lurrus recursion, so it's super awkward for both of us. But like the house of cards that I see myself constructing and winning with involves just like a flyer that is bigger than a 3/2. So like opponent has to counter this now, like based on their sequencing. Like it just wouldn't make sense for them to do that. So now they're just gonna like jam Luris, play a bobble, and I'll try to win Luris. It felt pretty good to me. We'll see whether or not it actually works. Like another counterspell here just means that I'm gonna lose. Okay, great. Oh yeah, Luris Delver is very good. That's no surprise to anyone. So now all I need is land. Ooh, Cabal Therapy, like double take Anafenza here is pretty good. They can also just take the Sarah Avenger and hope to race me. We'll see what they do. Oh wow, Honor of the Pure. That's interesting. And I'm not entirely sure what that is indicative of. Just gonna sneak my damage in now. Cast this imprint. Cast this imprint. I'm going to do this in the way that gives me counters, but plays Sarah Avenger into Daze. Alright, what am I putting my counter on? Probably the non-legendary creature. So now with a land, I have Luris into Sarah Avenger. So smart. So smart. Okay, great. So this was intentional on my end. So I didn't play anything first so I could play the Anafenza post-combat. I don't want to like play the Luris yet. And now my opponent has tapped a mana, so they don't have Hardcast Force of Will available. They have Hardcast Force of Negation available, though. I'm still going to go ahead and just cast this here. Try to take the pressure off me. So Jay, it's actually pretty darn common right now. That's very good. It's not the end of the world. Like, I have Luris at the ready, so we just want to draw a land. So since we didn't hit the land, we'll just play Drannith Magistrate this turn, rather than my Luris. And then once we get to 5, we'll Luris and probably Avenger from the graveyard. This Drannith Magistrate's pretty darn bad. My opponent has used their Luris already. So this is maybe stopping Dreadhorde Arcanist or something like that. But that's all. I guess it's not completely crazy that my opponent would just be playing a Snapcaster as well. Oh yeah, Legacy. Legacy got thrown in that little pate shaker thing that they have at Ace Hardware. That's what happened to it. Just very aggressively. All right. You have pushed my little buddy. I'm not willing to path him. Deal. That's not hitting my Loris. And Loris is the prize here. I can play around a Spell Pierce by waiting until my turn. But if I have Spell Pierce, is that bad? I either get to play around Spell Pierce or I get to play around like Daze if I spike Lurrus. I'm not going to play around Pierce. This is a little greedy on my end. But I feel like they have a cantrip. Like they paused a little bit after casting the Young Pyromancer, so I kind of feel like they have something like a Brainstorm. And if they like Brainstorm in response to this, get an Elemental token, and then I resolve Lurrus and rip the land like I want, I think all in all that's a win. All right, one card. Show me Force of Will. You did not show me Force of Will. All right, you showed me Lightning Bolt. That's fine. I have a Sarah Avenger when you're at 6. Yeah, so Headshot, that's something I found common about the Lurrus deck building in this specific shell. Your graveyard hate's super awkward. That's something I talked about at the beginning of the stream. Because like Rest in Peace and Grafdigger's Cage are shutting off your Lurrus, but they're still like very, very powerful cards. And you can't really Tormod's Crypt since you are the Suppression Field deck, which is like normally the Grave Hate you'd want to play with Lurrus since you can keep recurring it. I'm going to go ahead and hold this Caracas. On the off chance that my opponent does have like another legendary creature of some nature, I don't know what it would be, but on like the off chance that they do. Ooh, you had all your removal on time. You're getting a little bit of salt there on our 12-turn game. I'm okay with that. And it's actually false. I didn't have all of my removal because I have 10 pieces. Yeah, I don't think we get the luxury of playing Leyline. All right, let's go Suppression Fields out when we're on the draw. I kind of just want to increase the number of creatures that I am going to be playing. So I'm going to do something that looks wonky. Would you like me to bring Chalice back in? I don't think so. And like Chalice on 0 is only of medium power level if we're trying to like deal with the Luris threat via Magistrate or just removing it. So I think I'd rather just have like Relic Order as another 2/2, as stupid as that sounds. We saw our opponent playing EE, so in the Magical Christmas Land world where my opponent just taps 2 mana and plays out an EE, and I steal it with Relic Order, that probably wins me the game. Wins is a game 1 card that you can play while Chalice is in play on 1. Whereas Path and Swords of Plowshares in the sideboard are for when you can afford to not play Chalice of the Void. So in matchups like Delver and Eldrazi, you're not necessarily looking to Chalice your opponent based on how this deck is constructed. So instead you like do a flip-flop and you play more removal. Yeah, so a lot of times like blind when you don't know what your opponent is on because they revealed Luris, you just jam a turn 1 Chalice on 1. And if that's your game plan, then having access to something like Path to Exile is not great. One thing I will say in terms of removal is that other versions of this deck instead played Settle the Wreckage as additional removal in the sideboard, as like another copy of something that's kind of wins-like that just gets massive blowouts, and that card was very good for me as well. I'm all about trying new things in this current metagame, though. I really like how I played that previous game, in terms of sequencing my spells. A lot of the things that I did worked out really well for me, like using the Rest in Peace as a bait spell that was very good, and like kind of wiggling towards a position where we got to maximize potential value out of our Luris and out of most of our spells. Definitely felt like that was one of those like use every part of the Buffalo games, where like the way that I used my resources was what led to my victory, rather than just like the raw resources that I have just being better than my opponent's resources. If you're referring to me, it's actually Latin. So, like, that's the point of confusion there because the languages are related. I don't know basically any Portuguese. I know Tua Prima is your cousin because I watch Black Orpheus every year, which is an awesome, awesome movie. Very artistic, alternative retelling of the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. Is my Lotus Petal like worth accelerating out for any of these cards? I think I'm just chilling. Like I kept this hand because like it had lands and spells and it was fine. So my username is sort of a pun. So Madoka Magica is a Japanese anime, and Medea is a character from classical mythology. Madoka Magica is a show about witches, and Medea was a witch from the Greco-Roman world. Vault therapy resolves. So I have mixed the two together and thus created my username. So it's just like the magical Medea is the translation of my username. So the Thalia is going to make this Honor the Pure that's in my hand awkward. But I think I'm good with that. Another Cabal Therapy from my opponent is super awkward for me, because I can't play out my Sarah Avenger before they could Cabal Therapy me. Straight up, I think you're supposed to trade that Crater Maker for double Avenger. Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, so am I doing this live? Yeah, I'll do this live. Okay, so something that's really interesting is that a lot of times when you're reading something that doesn't have spaces between it, your brain wants to break up the text in a certain way, but that's not necessarily the way that the text is supposed to be broken up. So two people reading an identical chunk of text may end up seeing different things, depending on where they think the breaks in the words are supposed to go. If I play Honor of the Pure, and I actually get to resolve Sarah Avengers, they're 4/4s, and they're out of range of Lightning Bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Yeah, it's interesting because that sort of thing happens with Latin quite a bit. Yes, I will trade my Lotus Petal for that. Because in many Latin texts, there actually aren't spaces between the words in the original versions, because Latin is often engraved in stone or written on papyrus, and you're trying to save as much space as possible. Very happy with that draw. Interesting turn. I can't play around Pierce this turn, no matter what. I don't think I want to play around a second Daze. I think I'm just going to cast Winds here and hope that this trades with this card. I'll get punished by Daze and they get to Ponder, but it'll make my future turns better. Because, for example, if my opponent were to tap out for Luris or some other threat, I could double Swords to Plowshares. This Cabal Therapy is going to suck. Young Pyromancer was very bad for me. So now they ponder, they create an elemental, they Cabal Therapy, they take away my Sarah Avengers. I will at least single Swords to Plowshares. I maybe have to double Swords to Plowshares the board. The board's pretty threatening right now. That is like literally one turn too late. One turn too late. I think I'm going to play towards worlds where Rest in Peace resolves. So we're going to take out the Young Pyromancer and the Sword and the Delver, and leave the Arcanist. And big assumption, but if the Rest in Peace actually resolves, we're in okay shape. Fuck, come on. That's so many dudes. So this sucks because it makes my own Luris worse, obviously. But I'm not going to be able to beat recurring Goblin Crater Maker or just like the Arcanist, Young Pyromancer secondary value. So we have some lifelink in the tank. That's good. This is a great draw. This is Lightning Bolt immune. So if I play Luris, Luris will have 3 toughness. And it can block anything that's on board, but it will die to Lightning Bolt. If I draw a 4th land, I can Anafenza and Sarah Avenger in the same turn. I think I'm going to play the thing that doesn't die to Bolt here. I also kind of feel like my opponent misplayed by not cracking their bauble, right? So if they crack their bauble, they have 1 more shot at having Force plus blue card. So I don't know, maybe they don't have a blue card in hand currently, or don't have a Force of Will in hand currently. So I don't super understand this bauble sitting in play for that long. Like, that delayed card seems very costly. They're not playing greens. They don't have something like Wilt to just get rid of the Rest in Peace and then put things into the graveyard. That's good. But I might just need to jam Luris here for the lifelink reasons. Which sucks, because it's going to walk into Daze and a removal spell. But the lifelink is like so beyond important here. Alright. Alright, opponent kind of had it all there. Not much to be done. I really liked how we played that one, but it just did not pan out. And that's kind of the story of this whole league. Feel like we played pretty well throughout the league, but maybe the power level of this deck isn't quite there. I definitely think the shell is interesting. Let's maybe move some of these around so I can get the entire thing up on screen here. Like, the shell is interesting, but like there's some real problems. Like, Drannith Magistrate kind of builds a fragile house of cards. Honor of the Pure isn't great on its own. I don't have endgame card draw or selection. A lot of my hands without mana acceleration are a little slow. So like the deck has problems. And I think a lot of these Lurrus style decks have similar problems. So this is MM17's White Weenie deck list, where similarly the non-Lurrus endgame is basically non-existent. So this one trades some of the lockout potential of the deck that I have for more early aggression. And it gets to play mana acceleration via Mox Amber that like my iteration of the deck does not get to do. This deck has slightly more selection in that it has like Smuggler's Copters looting, and like that has synergy with Lurrus as well. But kind of like we saw in, was it round 1 that we won against White Weenie? Once your opponent stabilizes, like there is not a damn thing that you can do to catch up. So like I put a 3/3 Sarah Avenger into play, and my opponent had like 6 more creatures than me and just like could not attack, right? So like once his deck starts to fall behind, it's in a lot of trouble. The Search Stompy deck lists have Winds of Abandon as a late game catch-up mechanic that like often leads to these crazy blowouts. But I don't know whether or not this is good enough. The version that one of my subs 5-0'd with had a slightly larger threat suite, but then doesn't get to play a companion. Yeah, Sarah Avenger was great this league. That's unquestionable. So like this was the 5-0 deck list that we got with this shell. And it had like Eldrazi's and Baneslayer Angels in the sideboard, so like you did have some like late game big bombs. But a lot of stuff in the CMC3 mana costs were really weak, so I wanted to explore what was it like when we played smaller stuff instead. And the results were, yeah, it was kind of medium. Okay, I'm not going to play the final match today. I'm going to go ahead and turn you over to the Legacy Double Dash event, which started a few minutes ago. I hope you all enjoy it. If you're new to the stream, please consider following. I'm streaming Legacy about 3 days a week. And if you're really enjoying my content, please consider doing something like a donation deck list or subscribing to my channel to support it. And you get sweet emotes like these when you do. Cheers, folks. Have a great rest of the day.